Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 7 of Coach's Corner with Justin and Ethan. 7 weeks, Ethan, that we've been chipping away at this podcast.
Yeah, time is flying by. It's amazing.
Feels pretty good.
Yeah, we'll be in the double digits soon.
It's interesting because I think about it and it's like, this is typically where people struggle with weight loss is around week 6 to 8, in my experience, because it's hard. And I think, but it's not just weight loss. I think it's anything. And I think that when you do anything that's exciting in the beginning, and you're hopeful for it, like this podcast, and all of a sudden it gets real, and the work begins. And around that week 6 or 7 or 8, you go, okay,
I gotta do this again.
Yeah, we're doing this. We gotta. It separates people who are just not serious versus people who are.
Yeah.
So Ethan, are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
He's fucking dead serious. So today we're going to be talking about the differences in metabolic rate between men and women, and really, do men actually burn fat faster than women? I know that people, women, men, everybody really just assumes men have it so much easier. They can just cut it. We've all heard the story just cut out soda and my husband lost 30
exactly.
pounds,
Yeah. My boyfriend, he loses weight so fast.
Right.
Yeah. He puts on muscle. Oh, his body changed so quick.
So I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be fun to break it down. We're not going to pick sides, obviously, but I think we can at least lay out what we've found and then just maybe chat about our own experience with it. And, and what we think is really the secret to losing weight.
The secret.
Ozempic.
Hey.
Just kidding. Any semaglutide will do it. Doesn't need to be Ozempic. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and people don't want to admit it now.
But
you know what I mean?
Taking it?
Yeah, they're doing Ozempic. People don't want to admit it. So I was like, okay, let's talk to this woman, consultation call. And it was like, all right, so talk to me about what you've done, what's been going on, what are your challenges? She's like, I was all the way up to 210 pounds, and then over the last year I got down to 140. I'm like, wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah, that's good.
She's like, but then no matter what I do, I've gained 12 pounds over the last month or so. I'm like, really? Just out of nowhere, you just started gaining 12 pounds. You just gained 12 pounds. She's like, yeah. I'm like, so what were you doing to go from 180 to 140? She's like, I was working out 5 days a week, still am, restricting my calories, just being mindful. She listed off 4 things, and then she goes, and then there's a abbreviation of it. It's like a,
oh, interesting.
It's almost it's not even semaglutide, because that's what people now say, because they don't want to say the name brand Ozempic.
Right.
So they'll say oh, it was a semaglutide, but now there's an actual name, like a GS2 or something. GLT1 or whatever. And I go, you mean, is that a semaglutide? And she's like, yeah. I was like, Ozempic? She's like, yeah. And now you're not on Ozempic anymore.
Yep.
No, I'm off of it.
Well, there you go.
Okay, so it's really not that big of a mystery then. You were suppressing your appetite, paralyzing your stomach, and then now you're off of it, and now you've gained weight back.
Yeah.
So that was a sidebar.
The Ozempic episode is coming for sure.
It is, but I guess it does kind of fit in, because if we're talking about, men versus women, who loses weight faster, this woman, 53 years old, menopausal woman, lost 40 pounds
more,
60 pounds.
Yeah. Because she won 140.
Went from 205 to 140, so 65 pounds.
Yeah, that's huge.
I'm like, okay, well then, if it wasn't because Ozempic itself made you burn more calories, it just you don't eat as much and you lost it.
Yeah.
So it's metabolism.
Fundamentally, it's just outside. It regulates the blood sugar. But yeah, I had a client that was on it, massage client, and he was saying that it also slows the exit of food from your stomach.
I read something, and I need to do a little bit better research on this, so don't quote me on it, but it was something about it kind of there's stomach paralysis or something like that happens, where there's just not functioning like a normal stomach.
Yeah, they just say you're full.
We got to do a little bit more research, and we got to dig in there, but there's a lot to it. But today what we want to talk about is the differences between men and women, metabolic rates, what we found to support or deny this claim, and then just what one can, how to maybe think about it in a way that's relative to the individual. Right?
Yeah.
I want to start off by just reading a little study that I came across.
Bring in the science.
And then we can dissect it. So a study in the Journal of Diabetes, Obesity, and Metabolism, I'm sure it was a very popular journal, woo, did a study with 2,200 people. It's kind of like the most famous one. I read a bunch of articles online, and they kept referencing this same study.
Yeah.
So this seems to be like the big data point here on this topic. So 2,200 overweight individuals throughout like Australia and New Zealand. They all were pre-diabetic. They all were considered obese. They put them, both men and women, on an 800 calorie a day diet. So right there, that's red flag number one. But men and women were both in the same.
That's the thing, yeah, right.
At the end of the 8-week period, men lost on average 26 pounds. Women lost on average 22 pounds.
Yes. Which is really not that far off from each other.
Right.
It's not like it was 12 pounds and 26. So there is more from the men, but I think, to what you were just saying, if you're going to put both men and women who have different caloric needs on a daily basis on the same calorie restriction, then you're just going to have a variance there that I think would probably make up for that difference.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
Two things really are surprising about that study. One is how close men and women were.
Yeah.
In their weight loss. Like it's not that big of a difference. 26, 22 pounds. That doesn't seem that crazy to me, right? Like, excuse me. I would have assumed men would lose much more.
Yeah, I would agree. A bigger swing from those two numbers.
So it makes me think then if you since men are maybe 20 or 30% larger on average than women, what if to compensate equally with calorie deficit, if men maybe consumed proportionate to their body weight, and both men and women were both in the comparable calorie deficit, at the end of that trial, would men be more like 22 pounds? Because men were they had an advantage in the study because they were eating in a much larger deficit than women were.
Yeah.
But they only lost on average 4 more pounds. So interesting there. But I think it just highlights that fundamentally it's a calorie in, calorie out equation.
It's just, when it comes down to it, it's just that it's like there are so many other cofactors that can influence, I think, weight loss. But when it comes down to it, it's like if there's not energy going in, it can't just magically be produced from nowhere.
Right.
You can't just like produce body fat.
One of the biggest issues that I see is unintentional underreporting. So if we don't write things down, our short-term memory is absolute shit.
Yeah.
And we forget. And then we look back at the past through rose-tinted glasses and we go, I think I ate fine. I think I eat really well. I mean, I've had people on phone who are diabetic, 100 pounds overweight, high cholesterol, you name it, everything. And they're like, no, I think I eat pretty well. And it's like, well, do you actually track what you're eating? It's like, no.
Yeah.
So this is where we have to just understand that our feelings are complete crap, and we have to just follow the numbers, because otherwise we'll convince ourselves that everything's fine when it's not.
Just when it's not. I mean, it's interesting. I wish I would want to know like almost it's 2,000 people, but it'd be interesting to see like a graph of all of the starting weights for the men and the starting weight for the women in the study.
Mm-hmm. It would be.
Yeah.
Right, and then just adjust accordingly from there.
And of course, like I was saying before, there are cofactors like your hormonal system and your sleep and other things that can affect, I think, the weight loss in a general sense. But when it comes down to it, it's because you're just eating less food. There's.
800 calories is freaking low.
I'm impressed.
These people were considered obese. it's easy to just eat like a typical breakfast could be 800 if you have a few
Easily.
eggs, a few slices of toast with some butter on it.
Hash browns.
That could be 800 calories very quickly.
Absolutely. Some bacon, especially if you get the bacon in there.
And that's a whole day. So, yeah. But one other thing that was interesting is that, so on that study, the men lost 26 pounds, the women lost 22 pounds. But men, because we have higher levels of testosterone, we held on to more lean mass than women. So women in that extreme of a calorie deficit, which is why I think we should definitely talk about this, but why ultra low calories and just it's deceiving because you can lose a lot of weight when you're, if you're on a semaglutide, for example, you can lose a lot of weight. And when you hop on the scale, it's like, wow, look at all this weight loss, but it's not just only body fat. Like people are losing tons of lean muscle mass as well because you're just not eating anything.
And that'd be interesting to look at because, always compositional change is what we're going for. Increase lean mass, decrease body fat. And if you're going just by weight, you don't know how much lean mass loss was contributing to that change. And so to the point that being that men have generally just more lean mass to start with and have the aid of more testosterone, I wonder if the fat loss that occurred for those 24 pounds, or that there was more of it was fat,
right?
Versus in the women they might have lost 22, but how much of that was because of the muscle loss as well? And so in that capacity, did men lose more fat? But it's just rough with that one because it's like if they're in a larger deficit, it's just not a fair exactly compare. It's
not fair.
It's just not a fair comparison.
It's not a fair comparison, yet it's surprising how close they were.
How close they were, yeah. Even considering it's not a fair comparison. If you were to tell me that off the bat, I would have definitely thought the men would have lost much more. Definitely. Much more. And I think that's the difference, though, is the hormonal situation.
Right.
And that generally when people try to lose weight, they do some form of exercise. Most often. They kind of 1-2 punch package of starting to exercise more as well as pay attention to your food. And I think in that capacity, men tend to, as we were just saying, maintain or put on lean mass easier. And so I think that is just a difference between the two,
Muscle mass is the key factor here.
Muscle mass,
right? So
larger, more you have.
Theoretically, if a woman had more lean muscle than a man in a scenario, then that she probably would burn more calories. But it just so happens that men are kind of built physiologically to hold on to more muscle tissue.
Yep.
On average, men have slightly lower body fat percentages on average than women do. But also what's interesting is when you just kind of look at behavior, and this is probably a lot of societal as well and expectations, is that it just so happens that, yes, men naturally hold on to more muscle tissue. They also tend to lift weights more.
Absolutely.
Where women tend to do more cardio activity. And I think the reason they do the cardio activity is because they want to lean out and they want to stay toned.
Yep.
But it's counterintuitive because actually the way you would tone, which really just means lower body fat and some more muscle mass, I guess. It's
the infamous toned, yeah.
But actually, if women just strength trained predominantly, it would get them the result that they're seeking through cardio, which actually just increases cortisol levels and deteriorates a little bit more muscle tissue, and certainly isn't anabolic by any standpoint.
No.
And so it kind of, it's interesting. I think a lot of that has to do with societal norms on men and women training.
Absolutely. I mean, the weight room isn't synonymous with women.
Right. Not too many.
It's all about the men grunting. And I think more and more women are starting to get into weight training. I mean, they do exist. But, I mean, in a lot of cliches, you always hear people going to bar or going to floor Pilates or mat Pilates. Right. And these are all wonderful forms of movement and exercise. But like you were saying, it's not really anabolic. If you go to a bar class, you might lift some 5-pound weights, but you're not doing your progressive overload. You're not really bringing any of your musculature into any of that kind of fatigue that's going to increase your lean mass at all.
Right.
And so there is, it's like, oh, I want to get toned, so I'll go to do this class or that class, maybe do a boot camp. But it's just culturally, I think, not as much women with the iron game.
And this is where we really have to like understand the nuance of it, where just because you go to a boot camp class, men and women, and you're sore, that doesn't mean you're building muscle. There might be like a natural couple of pounds that you build just as your body sort of acclimates to the new environment, new stimulus, but you're not just you're not gonna build noticeable muscle by doing air squats and burpees. You know what I mean?
No, without that whole progressive overload, without the external weight, and a lot of time I think it's just not going to happen. And I think also, when you're in a caloric deficit, your body's already having to deal with that stress. And then I think a lot of time what happens is that people go and do these high calorie output, very intense, like you said, boot camp classes or running, and things that are really just pulling more calories off of you, even though you're already in a deficit. Like you said, cortisol's going up. It's just kind of stressing you out in a way, stressing the body out. Mm-hmm. And I think that is one of the reasons I think people do lose as much muscle as they do when they're in a deficit, because it's always going to happen a little bit. You're going to let go of a little muscle, and obviously weight training is going to be the thing to combat that the most. And so I think what happens also is that you're in a deficit and you start running however many miles, doing these boot camps, and you're really just kind of pulling too much vitality off of you.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, it's just zapping you. It's hard to recover. Then you're probably going to be achy from a run or a boot camp, which means the last thing you're going to want to do is then go lift weights, which is actually going to get you the result that you're seeking from these boot camps. But it's just culturally, a lot of us aren't there. We kind of associate strength training with like bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, I don't want to look like that. I want to look like an athlete. But it's actually, that person looks like an athlete because of the way they were born. If that person is 6'3", long, lean, and muscular, it doesn't, that he didn't get that way because they happened to play flag football or played soccer. Like, they were born that way.
Yeah. They played flag football because they were that way.
Exactly. Right. They're a swimmer because they have long arms, and they're tall. That not because of the way they train. So if you want to train like somebody who is that, you're missing the point, Yeah,
like all these really tall basketball players don't get tall because they played basketball,
Yeah, and a lot of these people, you're surprised when you actually see how they train. Like a lot of professional athletes, when you dig into the way that they train, it's like, oh, that's weird. It's like nonsensical sometimes. And because like they don't really know exercise science, they're just incredibly talented and naturally athletic.
Yeah.
And with a base level of exercise, they can achieve great things. Who knows where they would be if they had superior training? But a lot of these people, I'm always like, wow. I'm like, okay, that's not how I expected Tom Brady to train. But right. Wow. All right, we're going to do 100 reps of banded flies. And you're like, what is that accomplishing?
Yeah, what is going on there?
So when people read his book, the T12 method or whatever it's called, they're like, yeah, I want to train like Brady. It's like, the dude's 6'5". He's the upper echelon of quarterbacks. You can do everything he does, and you'll never come close to that. It has nothing to do with the training method. It's all to do with the way he was born.
Yeah, it's like the actor that played Thor.
Yeah. I forget his name.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, Chris Helmsworth.
Chris Helmsworth. Yeah, there's another one like the Chris Helmsworth workouts, and it's like they're cool. Like,
well, because he has that app Circle.
Yep.
Which is it's just HIIT. It's just like cardio.
It's like body weight, like animal flow. Yeah. Look, it definitely will make you fit, but it's not.
I would bet everything that the way he prepares for Thor has nothing to freaking do with his app. I think that he just was in there bench pressing, back squatting, deadlifting, bicep curls, lateral. He was doing I'm sure.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, so, case in point, it's like, it's just, the reason we're bringing all this up is because if you, don't think that just because you do things that people like bodybuilders do, that you're going to look like a bodybuilder. They're a bodybuilder because of other factors. Steroids, genetics, all these other things.
3 hours in the gym.
Yeah, and they're training
6 days a week.
30 sets per muscle group per week. I mean, the volume is insane. If you did 8 sets per muscle group per week. And just put on like 5 pounds of muscle. That would increase your metabolic rate by a lot.
Yeah.
You would look amazing, and it would accomplish this, tone visual look that most men and women are looking for, but don't do the thing that they need to do because they're afraid of looking like a bodybuilder.
The bulky. I mean, it is amazing how often you'll hear
Men and women.
Oh, both. Yeah, 100%.
I don't want to be bulky.
I don't want to be bulky. Like I want to look. I want to fill out a little bit, or I want to look good, but I don't want to get bulky though.
Yeah, it's like, bro, you lose 30 pounds of body fat, and then we can talk about putting muscle on.
I wish I could get bulky. I mean, geez.
Yeah.
Bust my ass lifting weights, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't look like I don't work out, but I'm not. You wouldn't look at me and be like, that guy.
He's bulky.
He's huge.
Yeah,
Damn,
right.
I'm fucking ripped, man.
Whoa, bro.
Yeah.
Lay off the bicep curls and protein shakes.
Oh.
So, interestingly, though, men may drop weight faster, right? So the CDC reports that 36% of American adults are over a body mass index of 30. For those of you who don't know, 30, whether you're all muscle or all fat, if your body mass index of 30, that's large. You're a big person, right? So 36.5% of American adults are considered obese with a body mass of 30. Interestingly, although men do lose weight faster, and from what I'm gathering from just some, researching for this episode, back of the napkin, I'm thinking about 10 to 15% more calories on average than women do. That's what I'm kind of gathering here. It's not as big as people think that it is.
Yeah.
But it does exist. You'd be naive to think that men don't burn more calories than women. They do. A lot of it's individuals, a lot of it's circumstantial, a lot of it's, age-related, activity levels. But on average, from my rough assessment, about 15%.
15%.
That's what I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But even though men can lose that faster, there are more obese men than there are women, which is interesting. Why do
you think that is? I mean, I would assume just societal factors or behavioral factors.
I think that women are more aware of themselves in general. I think societally, it's more accepting for men to be bigger than women.
Yeah, I think there's a societal pressure, I think, that women feel to look a certain way or be held to like a beauty standard.
Yeah, exactly.
And like there's not inherently, I think, a beauty standard like that for men. It's just not quite the same.
It's more of a status.
And it's not to say that there aren't ways or expectations of a good-looking man in terms of how he presents himself or dresses, but it's the how much is the cliche? Oh, just throw on like jeans and a t-shirt, guy's ready to go. It's totally fine, but not the case on the other way.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and I think that just from my own experience, I've probably taken over the last 4 years maybe 3,000 consultation calls for Carbon Fitness Method, a mix of men and women. And I mean, just my own experience, if a woman is 20 or 30 pounds overweight, they take that much more seriously. Where if a man is 20 or 30 pounds overweight, they don't, there's definitely I don't quite understand what the problem is feeling when I'm on the phone. They're like, yeah, so, I mean.
You're like laissez-faire, like, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm 230 pounds, but like.
So what?
I mean, I carry, this is what I always hear. I carry it well. A lot of dudes will tell me they carry it well. Or like, I'm 230, but I'm solid.
Right, I'm solid.
If you're 5'9", you're 230, like, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
that would be like professional bodybuilder size.
No. But he's solid.
He's solid, and they carry it well. Where I think that women, there's just a little bit more awareness around that, and there's more... They want it fixed faster. They want it fixed now.
I also wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I didn't think to look this up, but I bet you men drink more alcohol. Mm-hmm. Or I'd be curious to see what the statistics out there.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just in general, I feel like it's not to say that women don't imbibe, but I think generally,
right.
Yeah. It's like
And
whiskey
then-
culture is generally geared towards men, right?
Right.
Things like that.
Beer, whiskey,
you know.
Even wine, really.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
it's again, it's not to say that there aren't females that drink or don't like bourbon or whatever, but generally.
for sure. And I think also just like when you're in a setting where you're drinking, inhibitions go down. Women might think twice before going in for another round of wings and fries, where men might just be like, fuck it, you know, like, I don't care, and they're just in it, you know. Yeah. But at the end of the day, especially like just in my experience, it's like men tend to burn maybe 500 to 1,000 calories more per day than women do. However, I mean, we've worked with so many people, and I've seen it happen. I've seen two people come in. You remember when we owned Strength RX, and I forget their names, but two clients came in for our 6-week challenge, and they were both on proportional diets. I think the guy, we gave him like 1,800, and the girl, we gave her like 12 or 1,300. So proportion. I mean, he was eating about 500 calories more than she was, but they were coming to the workouts together. They were doing their walks. They lived together.
Yeah.
They were meal prepping together. They were almost like a perfect example or perfect case study on this. And she lost like 22 pounds and he lost like 18. And so it just goes to show like there are general sort of things that exist, but then it's so individual and case by case. My hunch is that whatever, like even if there is that 10 to 15% increase in metabolism, that can be erased through 10 to 15% less compliance.
Yeah, deviation, right?
Or deviation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe the man burns 15% more calories than the woman does, but the woman's 20% more compliant and consistent, and then therefore over the same period of time gets better results.
Yeah. And, it's the thing of, I think the challenge of the just caloric allowance in a day might make weight loss more challenging for women, because by generally having a lower BMR or base metabolic rate, when they're in a deficit, it's going to just be less food for the day. And I think, it's easy to say, a boyfriend and a girlfriend go out for a burger and fries, and they both eat the burger and they both eat the fries. Like, it's not like that big of a deal. It's easy for them to consume.
Right, like
that.
you don't have a woman's portion and a man's portion.
Yeah, it's not like the French
the
fries are like
right.
proportioned differently, and so there you have, it's pretty easy to eat that same meal, but that's going to be a lot more detrimental to somebody with a much lower caloric ceiling, which generally women will have, just because generally they have a lower BMR. And so I think that is just a challenge that is just kind of like a fact of life challenge that makes losing weight for women maybe a little more challenging, just from a practical sense.
Yeah, just environmentally. Like if you're sitting down and everyone gets a plate of food, the plate of food's the same, it's hard. It takes a lot of willpower and awareness to either eat half of it or to just not want to, and just that peer pressure of just, all right, well, I don't want to like be the only person like not eating.
Yeah. So, and I think, but to what you were just saying about the couple that came in from Strength RX, it's like, in the end, it's not that there's like a hands down, men just have it that much easier per se than women. It's not like women have to go this crazy extra mile. I think what just comes down to it is that if you eat the appropriate amount of food, you get some good general physical activity in and some exercise, that you will lose weight. Right? It's not this like such a stark contrast that it's like one method doesn't work for one and the other one is just fighting uphill. I think it's just when it comes down to it, you just have to do the things that you have to do, and that applies to both men and women.
Yeah, just adjust accordingly, and like whatever that 10 to 20% calorie deficit is for you and your body weight, like that might be a little bit lower than you think, unfortunately. And that might be tough if you live with a man or you spend time with men who are eating 2 times more than you. It can be hard to be in that environment and to, realize like, okay, like I got 1,500 calories for the day and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's the burger and fries right there is 1,500 calories.
Yes, exactly. And that can go so quick.
And what's interesting too is I think we're all under the assumption that as we age, our metabolism's lower. One of the big things I hear on calls all the time is like, well, I'm getting older and my metabolism is slowing down. And I've always questioned this because I've just seen people in their 50s and 60s get fantastic results with weight loss when they really dial it in.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that coin, I have some people in their 20s who are just a hot mess and can't seem to get their crap together and don't lose any weight. So I came across a study in the Journal of Science and Metabolism, or in the Journal of Science, excuse me, that metabolism holds steady, basically very the same from 20 years old to 60 years old.
I was going to say 60, right? They
Yep.
used to, it was the common belief it was 40. Like it's all downhill after 40. But really it's just lifestyle factors that we move less, right? We drink more alcohol. We eat, we don't pay as much attention to what we eat. We're just not playing sports anymore.
So the key factor though in this study was that as long as your muscle mass doesn't change.
Oh.
So if your muscle mass stays the same, your metabolism stays the same from 20 to 60. And then after 60, on average, it declines about 0.7% per year.
1% a year.
So what's interesting about that is, okay, it kind of comes back full circle. What do we know? Muscle mass is the key factor here.
Lean tissue.
Doing exercises like cardiovascular, running, boot camps, good for VO2 max and other important
Good for
things.
health in general.
But if the goal is to keep a high metabolism, so you're not just having to do ultra low calorie diets for the rest of your life, you have to maintain or build that muscle tissue, and the only way that's going to happen is through strength training.
Yep.
So
Back to the golden egg.
That is really it. I mean, that's the key.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, we did a whole episode on cardio and why it's important. I know
And
it
one on
seems like
strength training.
Yeah, we bash it, but it's just it really does seem to circle around to like that lean mass, both for like the mortality and all the mortality rates and everything. Yep. It's just that lean mass, and you gotta lift weights.
You gotta lift weights, and then also like
you can be your body weight. I don't care.
And then you kind of have to eat some food to build some muscle, which is gonna be very difficult for a lot of people, men and women, to wrap their head around, because it's like, wait, I got to eat more. I've been conditioned. I've been told I have to eat less. And what I think what we're saying is it needs to go in phases. You need to just commit to maybe 4 months of eating just a smidge past your maintenance level of calories, just so you're in a tiny little bit of a surplus, so that you can give your body what it needs, create that environment, that fertile ground to build some muscle. And then pull down into a deficit. And then I like to think of spending about half my year building up and then the other half my year pulling down. And then I kind of seesaw back and forth like that.
And I think it's just whether you go on a deficit and a concerted meal plan of some type, or you're just... In either way, the protein, it just always comes back to protein. Like the cliche of the fitness world and protein, whether you're trying to get big or lose fat, is just undeniable. It is the structure. Protein is essential. We've got energy in our fat if we really needed it. But we can't just like synthesize protein out of nothing. We can, degrade our own muscle tissue and our own, we can, in a survival sense, we will.
But that's just to create energy out of it.
That's just to create energy. It's just to create, it's not optimal.
I mean, if these people who are 30 BMI or over and they're considered obese, ate 800 calories a day for 2 months, and their life's got a lot better,
Yeah.
just goes to show you, like there's the biological element where actually you're probably going to be okay, and then there's a psychological element where you have to challenge your beliefs on, am I starving or am I just hungry?
Yeah.
And that's the hurdle that any diet is going to have to overcome. It's like, yes, you're going to be uncomfortable. Yes, we are bringing you into a calorie deficit. That means that we're going to have to shift into being completely dependent on glucose for your energy to now adapting that metabolism to burn body fat to compensate for the deficit. And in that transition, you might feel a little woozy. You might get a little cranky.
Yep.
You might need a little nap and feel like hangry. But that will pass in a couple of weeks and you'll actually feel a lot better.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that is you'll see, some results. But,
Well, and I think even a person, I didn't finish that thought, but even people that are in a calorie deficit tend to have to find that they're eating more protein than they were before, even when they weren't in a calorie deficit.
Right.
And I think sometimes that's an odd, like to the point of like, oh, I have to eat more. Like even if you eat properly, like I got my one client, he's on a deficit, he's doing great, but he's like, I just can't believe I have to eat this much protein. He's like, it's so hard, I'm just eating chicken and this and that. And it's just interesting to see the shift of like, he feels like he's eating all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for him to eat all the food, but really he's in a 20% deficit, and it's just because it's so protein oriented. And I think that on either direction, that little change will do people so much better. And it's just,
We hear it all the time. It's like we give everybody, when you come on board, you get a list of food from us, and it's just like maybe a dozen items.
Mm-hmm.
Single ingredient whole foods, lean proteins, complex carbohydrates, fruits and veggies. That's it.
Easy.
So do your best. Have at it. The first week you're with us, there's no calorie targets. There's no meal plans.
Go for
you
it.
just eat off this list and try to get a piece of one of these proteins in with each of one of your meals. And we're talking people who have been eating thousands of calories a day through junk food. All of a sudden now they can't even get to 2,000 because it's single ingredient, it's whole foods, it's complex foods. And they can't even eat 2,000. Like, I'm stuffed.
Yeah.
That's a bowl of quinoa that big with veggies and chicken. I can't even finish it.
Yeah.
And it's like that mass of food was 400 calories, maybe, right? And you would have put 2 or 3 times that amount of food in a mass a third of the size.
It's that hidden fat.
Yeah.
Those tricky fats. It just comes down to like the fat. It's everywhere if you don't watch out.
Totally.
And it just raises those calories so quick.
Yep.
It's like a bag of chips. It's really just a bunch of potato. It's really not that.
We should do an episode on macros and just kind of break it down.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good one.
Be a fun
just
one.
to kind of give the why behind it. And I'm not a huge macro stickler, but the more I explore it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
Because of what you just said. Because otherwise it's like olive oil, avocados, nuts. It's like the client, I had a healthy power bowl. I was, well, what was in it? Nuts, cacao, avocado, olive oil. And I'm just like, oh my God, like probably 100 grams of fat in there.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, each one of those are healthy, but
good quality
you
food
realize
choices.
that one bowl is probably, 80% of your daily calorie intake, right?
Yeah.
It's like, they're like, huh?
Like, wait a
But
second.
it was from Whole Foods.
That same client I was just talking about, it's like he'll hit his fat requirement so quick, he says, but to even get his carbs up, I'm like, we gotta flip it around a little bit, So it's just really interesting, the little challenges and the caveats.
Yeah.
But
But that's the game.
I think when it comes down to it, though, the human bodies are different. I think primarily the hormonal factor is probably the biggest contributor to any changes between men and women that might have to affect metabolism and fat loss and compositional changes.
What I tell people who tell me that they're dealing with hormones or whatever, I say, is there any room for improvement in your diet? Maybe hormones are the issue, maybe they're not. Do you feel like, if you were to be totally open and honest with me, is there room for improvement in your diet? And they're like, oh yeah. Okay. So why don't we move hormones over to the side for now? Let's focus on the basics and we'll clean all this up. And if we can do all this and you're accurate and you're consistent and you're on top of things and we don't get you there, fine. You know what? You have my blessing. Let's get some hormone tests done.
Let's see what's going on.
Chances are it's probably more of a diet issue. And even if it is a hormone issue, well, it only varies by degree.
Right. You're going to still have to put yourself in a deficit.
Right.
It's not like, for men or women, if you have hormone dysregulation from terrible sleep patterns, and that's increasing your cortisol and doing all the things to fight against your goals, it's not going to change the fact that you still have to do the fundamental behaviors to get you there in the first place. Right?
So maybe instead of 1,500 as a deficit, maybe now it's only 1,000. That sucks. I acknowledge that would be very hard, especially like if you're, you've been trying to lose weight your whole life and you've been battling with it, and maybe pre-hormone issues or dysfunction, 1,500 was a good number for you, which is still low. Maybe now it's 1,200 or 1,000, and that sucks. But I guess my point is that it only varies by degree. And then if you can be open-minded and just challenge your belief systems, we can find what that number is, get you there, pull that body fat off, and then work on slowly kind of refeeding, rebuilding, and building that metabolism up through exercise and slowly introducing more calories each week and kind of nudging you back up. I mean, I went from like 210 a few years back down to 179 at my lowest.
That's so crazy.
We owned the gym, we owned the CrossFit gym at the time. I was doing CrossFit, I was lifting weights. I mean, like, I wasn't like by any standards big.
Still, man.
But I thought maybe I had to lose 10 pounds. And then I hired my own nutrition coach. He brought me down to 2,200 calories. Actually, he didn't even, what he did is the same thing that I do with my clients now is he just said, here's your list of foods, just eat normally for a week and write it all down.
Right.
And then we averaged it out, and it was only, off of single ingredient foods, it was only 2,100 calories. That's all I could get down.
It's crazy.
But I had been eating probably 3,000 or 4,000 a day up until that point with higher fat foods.
Yeah.
So then he's like, great, there we go. We're going to start at 2,100, get you up to 150 protein every day, and I'll see you in a week. I mean, I went from 210 to 170. I mean, I lost weight. It was just melting off of me. And I got so freaking lean and very small for me. But then we spent the whole next year slowly refeeding. And there's a lot of, another episode we could do is maybe reverse dieting or not.
Yeah.
Because I've done both, and I'll tell you, like, we did a reverse diet for over a year. And we went from 21 to 22 to 2250 to 23, 23. And we just inched along. And there'd be 3 weeks in a row where he'd be like, no, we're going to keep it right here. Yeah. Within a year, I was up to 3,100 calories.
It's crazy.
I went from 179 to 185.
Right.
But I was still just as lean as I was at 179. But now I'm eating 1,000 calories more a day. Mm-hmm. And I've only gained 5 or 6 pounds.
Yeah. But do you hear that? Do you hear that, folks?
Yeah.
A year of incremental. Yeah. That means Justin was weighing his food and doing his diligent numbers every fucking day
for a year.
For over a year. So that's what it takes.
Yeah.
That's what it takes. Just and I got to give it to this guy, when he's on it. And there's just no room. It's I always tell him he inspires me because it's like, damn, dude.
Complete maniac sometimes. But yeah, and then now I kind of the opposite. I leaned out, and then I just went straight to 3,100. And I just went straight to what like my quote unquote maintenance would be. I gotta tell you, I'm not really thrilled with weight. I mean, I'm stronger. I definitely put on muscle. Yeah. But like when you're used to eating 2,200, you go straight to 22 to 32, like you gain fat. Like your body's like, what is all this?
Quick, store it for later.
So I've done both, and I'm a little bit more partial to the reverse dieting just for like maintaining low body fat as you slowly build. It's a much more arduous process, but
we'll definitely have to do an episode on that.
I think so, for sure.
Break it down in detail.
Cool. I think that was good. I think we checked all the boxes here. I hope that
included a variety of topics, I think.
Yeah. You can't talk about weight loss and strength training without kind of bringing in other things in. But I think the big takeaway is, men may have it a bit easier, but nothing makes up for effort and consistency. And whatever marginal benefit men may have metabolically, women could absolutely make up for in just being more accurate and being consistent, but really strength training is the key.
Strength training and just doing the process.
Yeah.
No magic bullet.
No magic. Well, Ozempic.
Well, yes.
And steroids.
That's true. Well, steroids. Yeah, I mean, steroids will wreak havoc on your body, and we'll see what this Ozempic does to.
Yeah. Well, they say with TRT, testosterone replacement for men, once you're on that needle, you're on it for life.
Yep. Yeah, that in one cycle I've heard, or one introduction.
Because, and I think what we're finding is it's similar with Ozempic now. Once you're on that needle, it's like you try to get off of it and just gain all your weight back. And you're like, well, what was the last 2 years of shooting this shit in my arm?
I mean, the massage client who's on it, like he's all about it. Sure. And I'm just like, so, and he's like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it forever now.
Once you're on it for life. A lot of folks don't want to do it for life, though. They want to, that's at least what I hear. But anyways, another episode on that.
All right.
Cool. All right. Later, guys. Have a lovely day.
See you next week.
See you next time.